Hey everyone, it's Raphael from XX Raphael Productions, and just recently I saw Marvel's The Eternals at the cinema, and I'm going to be talking about the movie in this video. So obviously, as this is a review video, there are going to be a lot of spoilers past this point. So if you have not yet seen the movie, well, this is simply your warning, alright? So let's get right to the review. So The Eternals, basically to summarize this up, these are a group of beings with supernatural powers who have secretly lived on Earth for thousands and thousands of years, living comfortable lives scattered across the globe, and they also fight evil monsters known as the Deviants. Now, they are also told to not interfere in human conflict, which I will bring up later when discussing the events of the previous MCU movies in relation to the Eternals. So the movie spends most of the first half making them reunite to fight against a potential world-ending catastrophe. So this movie introduced so many new characters for the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward. Now, specifically for this review, I will be talking strictly about the MCU version of the Eternals, so I won't be comparing it to the comics, nor will I be talking about which version is better, because we should know by now that the MCU characters occasionally differ from the characters in the comics. So these are all the new characters that we were introduced to, whom I have on screen right now, so you can see Angelina Jolie along with the rest of the cast, alright? So one thing I would like to mention is that the Eternals movie is currently the lowest rated Marvel movie as of right now. So going into this movie initially, I will admit that I was a bit worried after seeing the initial ratings, because if you saw these ratings without knowing what the movie was about, any prior knowledge, you would think that the movie was a dumpster fire. But I will say this right now, that coming out of the movie, it is not that terrible, and it is certainly not the best Marvel movie, but certainly nowhere near as bad as the critics claim that it was. In fact, I would say that I actually had a fun time watching the movie. So I had seen only the trailers, and I didn't as I was reading these reviews, I made sure to look at the spoiler-free reviews, so I had no prior knowledge to what the plot would be about, and I only knew what I saw from the trailers. So the thing I would like to say is that coming out of the movie, it had a very different tone and vibe compared to the other Marvel movies, and if I am being honest with you guys, there were actually times where it did not even feel like a Marvel movie, although it did reference Thanos, the Avengers, and it had the usual Marvel intro to remind us that it is indeed within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I would say that if you had come to me and told me that this movie was not part of the MCU, I would honestly believe you, because the way that the scenes were shot, the way that the movie was it was definitely very different from the Marvel Cinematic Universe's usual type of movie, and I'm actually glad that it kind of broke the mold, so it had a distinct tone and style. That's what I liked about it. So the only other MCU movie that I could think of that introduced so many new characters at once was Guardians of the Galaxy, where Marvel boldly introduced all these new characters, and it was obviously a tremendous success as well. So even then though, with the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I could still feel that the MCU vibe from there. So that was definitely much different from the Eternals, where, like I said earlier, if you told me that it was not a Marvel movie, I would definitely believe you. But I'm just glad that the I'm just glad that the movie referenced Thanos and the Avengers Endgame events, so it would basically remind us that it does take place within the MCU. And I just wanted to throw this out there because it was particularly interesting, and looking at other people's comments about it as well, they definitely felt the same way when it came to the tone being much different. Now, I would also like to mention that I did personally feel that the movie started off a bit slow, which, okay, look, I totally understand, because there are so many new characters in this team, all being introduced in one movie, that I can see why it is absolutely necessary, because you would have to introduce these characters from the ground up for us, the audience, to even care about them at all. So it's not like the Avengers, for example, where we had some previously established movies, like we had Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk, Thor 1, and Captain America the First Avenger, all before the first Avengers movie even came around. So those guys had previously established movies before eventually coming together into one team-up movie. So I can see why that was a necessary thing for this movie, because we are to introduce a huge team all in one movie. But I will admit that this definitely hurt the pacing somewhat, because we had to spend all that time before getting into the movie's main plot. And then we also had the Eternal, where we know the guy who moved like Superman and can shoot lasers. They spent half the movie introducing this guy, and then they had him killed off at the end as well after he betrayed the Eternals. But I will say that this is of course the MCU, so these are superhero movies, and they can always find some excuse to bring him back, and even bring back some other dead characters in a convoluted way or not. But yeah, so this is a major reason why I was saying earlier in the video that I would not compare it to the comic version, because the MCU does take their characters and give them different directions, alright? So the fight scenes were great, and I guess that's to be expected in a Marvel movie where they have demonstrated time and time again that they're great at making action sequences. And I definitely enjoyed these more compared to the fight scenes in the Black Widow movie, so seeing them use their powers in different ways was very cool and interesting, especially on the big screen, where it was honestly quite a spectacle to watch. And then we had the Speedster Girls. This is the one that stood out to me. I liked the Speedster Girls fight against Richard Madden's character near the Superman Eternal, somewhere near the end, and it was awesome, and it was a great show for heroes with super speed. Now, like I said earlier, it stood out to me because if you had watched my other if you've seen my channel's other videos, you would know that I've made plenty about the Flash TV show, so seeing this fight unfold on the big screen was hilarious, and it was definitely right up my alley. Now, they also did mention here why the Eternals didn't help during the events of Infinity War or Endgame when Thanos was still around. Now, I'm glad they elaborated more on this, because I was wondering this myself, especially after seeing these characters' powers from the trailer, where I kind of deduced that it would have been very important to have these kind of powerful characters around during the time of Thanos, especially as he was trying to, you know, destroy half the universe, then later on the entire universe when he realized that the snap wasn't enough. So the stakes were very high during Endgame, so I guess I'm glad that the movie tried explaining that the reason why the Eternals didn't intervene was because they weren't supposed to until a deviant was supposedly involved. They were not supposed to intervene in human conflicts, but I don't think that the excuse would fly around though, since Thanos basically wanted to destroy everything by Endgame. Like, Infinity War, okay, I can see why he just wanted to destroy half the universe's population, but in the Endgame though, he wanted to do it to all life in the universe and recreate it basically in his own image. So I guess it's kind of like, I don't know personally if I liked the excuse they gave, but I can kind of appreciate that they didn't gloss over it and at least try to explain why. But yeah, so I would definitely say that this movie was a roller coaster in terms of quality, in that there are some truly great moments, but at the same time some very low points as well. And most of my problems with the movie were mostly in the first half overall, as the second half does pick up a lot more and also has plenty of plot twists and unexpected moments, which I liked. So definitely want to put this out there. The second half of the movie is a lot better than the first half. It does improve as well around the halfway mark of the movie. Now, I definitely think though that they could have done much better in making some of the some of the characters more likable. Like, for example, we had the main protagonist herself, not really too interesting as a character. And I just want to say though that despite some of my problems with the characters, this is definitely not the fault of the actors, because they did the best with the material given to them, and their acting during most of the scenes were definitely very believable. Now, some of these characters though, I guess this is more a problem with the movie itself in regards to, you know, having to set up so many characters at once. It kind of made me care about more characters than others. Some were actually more likable than others as well as a result. And I guess before we get into the post-credits, I want to talk about the romantic subplots with these characters, where I guess in regards to Richard Madden's character, you know, killing himself near the end of the movie, I guess some of the romantic subplots were there to kind of make his death scene hit harder, but I guess I just really felt more indifferent towards these romantic subplots. Like, I wasn't really too invested in them. I know some people definitely hated them, some loved it, some were less keen on them, but for me, I was more in the middle, so I didn't really care about it, nor did I hate it that much. But yeah, I guess that's one thing they could have worked on as well, the romantic subplots. Like, it wasn't really fleshed out too well in my personal opinion. And yeah, this movie also showcased two post-credit sequences. We had Thanos' brother showing up to help the Eternals after that shocking ending. And I also liked how this particular scene reminded me of the Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer movie, where we had the Galactus cloud arriving at Earth. So this does show that the MCU can pull off that kind of scene much better, so that was pretty cool, I guess. And the movie also raised some great ethical questions, such as stopping all wars and conflicts, which sounded nice, but it also came at the cost of your freedom. So again, the actors did great during that kind of scene, where, you know, the Eternals had to turn against each other, and sometimes they also had to, like, I guess they had to come to a compromise as well. And that's one thing I liked. The characters, they really did come across like as a family, and it was really nice to watch. The chemistry between the characters were great. Okay, so that's one thing that I wish that the movie like did better on. Is, I mean, like, I will give credit to them though. They did the best of what they could. Like, they had to introduce all these new characters at once. And I did say the Guardians of the Galaxy was another example where they introduced many characters at once without any prior movies establishing them. So I guess when it comes to that regard, the Guardians did that particular part better than the Eternals did, but still the Eternals did a pretty good job overall in that regard, even if I feel they could have done much better. But yeah, as for the movie itself, I would probably give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10. So it's definitely not the best Marvel movie out there, and certainly not the worst one, but it is definitely much better than what the critics are saying. And this movie is also one of Marvel's most different movies as well. So that is my review for the Eternals. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and as a final reminder, Spider-Man No Way Home is coming out on December 17th, 2021, and I will do a review on that as well after it is released. So, Raphael out, and I will see you soon.